as you're driving the beat coming from Dunedin. And
I don't think he was there quite yet. I think
No,
he-
you're just over the bridge.
Wasi and Arleski, yeah, that's back when I used to know
Yeah, I used to
batting
do that
averages.
19.
Oh, do you? It's easier.
For me, the year that's
Yeah.
locked in place is kind of like 1970, 71, when they were awful. Alvin Dark was the manager.
Just come over.
Jack Hyden was the shortstop. Eddie Leon. I mean, these guys, when you grow up
Yeah, it's just-
and you're younger, there's kind of a couple of years in your life where you're all into
Backing
it.
up, because
I was all in,
Jays
so
is
I know all the
open up.
position players then, and
Oh.
then haven't followed them a whole lot since. then.
I was happy when that was closed.
I'll
I
go.
find that it's easier for
Lost
me to
track.
go to Clearwater.
Although I still root for my Browns.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, hard not to.
And then take.
I don't either.
Now,
Edgewater or
Browns are
Douglas
first,
even.
Bears are
And
second,
rather
Bucks are
than-
third. So they're not.
Well, and then I asked myself,
All right.
I think they're really going
That's how our loyalties go.
Drew Street's hard.
But,
Lights are
turned out
high.
to be
Hey,
a nice
nice to
city.
see you.
You're gonna
Absolutely. Go ahead back up there, what they've done, and
like
renovated a
expression
great
on the
place.
face or?
Yeah, the,
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
okay. That was my good deed for the day.
It still counts.
Oh,
Still counts.
Come on back to the cheap
The
seats.
cheap seats, the nosebleed seats.
Jennifer, I want another seat.
Well, you are more than welcome.
What you're all thinking.
No, I don't know if I trust everybody sitting behind us, that's the problem.
You got people from Ohio, it's cool.
Okay.
Travis?
Long time no see.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
We have two more people for a quorum.
Oh, boy.
We can hear you kind of, a little bit.
We're muted though.
No, we're on mute.
Right.
It's 1:30 now.
Oh.
I'll take it off. It's 1:30. Are we gonna wait much longer, do you think, for more people to show up?
Yeah, we're on mute actually from the conference room. Right?
Let's see who else is there.
Still waiting for people to filter in.
Hey, guys.
We're gonna go live.
Hey guys, we are taking you off mute, but we are still waiting a few more minutes for more people to show up. Can you hear us okay on our end?
Want to grab your name tag?
Michael?
Yep, can hear you. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael. Bill Johnson here.
Hey, Bill. How are you today?
Do we have anybody else on the?
To start conference recording, press 1. The recording has started.
Jadica, J-A-D-I-C-K.
Michael, is there anybody on the phone with you? I guess you wouldn't
Communications
know.
Director for T-Bar.
Yeah, I heard a couple of people join.
First ever.
Oh,
First ever.
Whoa.
good.
I'm not sure who all, but
We'll do a roll call once we get started.
Small world.
It is really small.
Well, I hope Bob is okay. It's,
I'll check on, I didn't want to buy his first 2 days, 3 days after his first show. He's still high on the anesthesia.
okay, do we have emails on? No.
What's our thing doing?
Although on the emails.
Good,
we
hey,
have
how you
them.
doing?
Yeah.
Right.
Working for announcement
his number.
organization, Joe Carter.
Sure.
Retirement lunch.
Is it a work number?
He doesn't work.
Seems like a lot of people.
So it's fine.
When he listings Well, no, it's for different ones.
So thank you.
this is Robert Feigl with Ford Pinellas. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Robert.
Thanks. Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Sure.
Who was the other person?
Hoyt on the phone as well, if that's what.
Hey, we did it. We're quorum.
Hey, great.
Hi.
Want to grab the
Yeah.
name tags?
I'm sorry.
So who's on the phone?
Michael.
Okay, good. I just didn't hear anything. This is Leo Dosaret.
Hi.
Well,
Still
I'm
the
sort of
season.
thrilled that you're here, because that means we have a quorum. We have 17 members. So the quorum actually would be 9, wouldn't it? I divided by 2 and came up with 8. But it's 5 minutes,
Okay.
so let's,
Yeah, we need the quorum
Yes,
vote, right?
17.
We can still.
we don't have many action items, so maybe somebody will show up. Well, welcome. I'm Bill Johnson, and you honored me by electing me as chairman, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the TBARTA Citizens Advisory Committee meeting of April 17th, 2019. I do not have any public comment cards. Is there any member of the public present? Sir?
I'm good. I'm just an
Okay.
observer.
Okay.
All right. Keep going. My name is David Barnwell. I'm from Orange County, and I like to find out what's going on in the rest of the world and get away from the mouse house. Share what you guys are doing over here, and hopefully maybe Lynx will get their act together.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Hey, Bill?
Good afternoon.
Now, we did definitely have a
Make it a
quorum.
quorum.
Just for everybody's benefit, Rick, could you start by going around and giving us your name and then the area that you represent?
Rick Richmond, I'm Hillsborough County NPO CAC.
Good afternoon, I'm Bill Roberts. I was appointed by Melanie Griffin from the TBARTA board.
Travis Norton, Pinellas County, appointed by Commissioner Karen Steele.
Dave Goodwin, appointed by Mayor Rick Reisman.
Kelly Miller, appointed by Commissioner Catherine Starkey.
Bill Johnson, appointed by Commissioner Janet Law.
Alan Garment from Hernando County, appointed by John Mitten.
Bob Widmar from Hernando County, at large, appointed by Cliff Emanuel.
Karen Mullins, for Pinellas people, 7.
And going around the outside of the room?
I'm Chris Jadek. I've met a couple of you. I'm the new communications director for TBARTA.
I'm Cindy Raskin. I am the new director of commuter services for TBARTA.
And I'm Bill Ball with Tyndall Oliver, working with TBARTA staff on the Envision 2030 plan that we'll talk about today.
Can I say something really quick? Holy crap, there's people that work for TBARTA. I know, right?
Who knew?
And I'm Jennifer Mendez, executive assistant, and this is Nikki.
Nikki Collin, administrative assistant for TBARTA.
Okay, great.
Can we go through who we have on the phone as well?
Yes. On the phone, Michael, I know you're there, but would you introduce yourself?
Sure, happy to. Welcome, everyone. Michael Case, TBARTA Principal Planner and Project Manager.
And then Hoyt, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, this is Hoyt Prendel, representing Hillsborough County, appointed by Commissioner Pat Kemp.
Thank you for joining us. And we have 2 other people on the line.
Yes, this is Leo Dosaret. I am the appointee for Parks.
Okay, thank you for joining us. And Robert, you're out there too?
Yes, this is Robert Feigl, for Pinellas staff.
Okay, is there anybody else on the phone line?
Yes, Bill Sanders, Bradenton City Council.
Hi, Bill. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, the consent agenda, there was one item on the consent agenda, and it's the Citizen Advisory Committee minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes as distributed? Not hearing any. Is there a motion? Well,
So moved?
I'm sorry, I should have noted. I did have one very small change on the back page. Under upcoming meeting events, the first one, the annual Future of the Regions Award Ceremony, that's actually on April 26th, and it is the 27th annual Future of the Regions Award Ceremony. So,
Thank you very much. We will note that.
all right. I think before I interrupted myself, we had a motion. Did we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Presentation item, the first one is a presentation on the TBARTA Regional Transit Development Plan. And Michael, are you going to introduce this, or shall we just turn it directly over to Bill Ball?
Mr. Chair, I would love the opportunity to introduce this project.
Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you. So you all recall, last month we did have a brief update on this. So it is the Regional Transit Development Plan, now branded Envision 2030, which we are required as a part of the legislative change, the same one that transformed us from Transportation to Transit Authority and replaced the master plan requirement to producing a regional transit development plan. So last we left it, we had kicked off the project internally, going over the scope, schedule, and project management procedures with Tyndale Oliver's staff. Very briefly, since that time, we have had the first stakeholder meeting on March 12th through the TBARTA Transit Management Committee. And we're required, for your information, to include the workforce development boards in the region, the MPOs and SDOT as well, so they were also in attendance for that meeting. This project, which Bill's going to go over here shortly, is going to follow the same guidelines described for local transit agencies, but with a focus on regional impact across the 5 counties in our charter, as well as doing some additional value-added services such as defining an organizational and financial strategy for TBARTA and identifying some regional projects for early implementation. So Bill's going to present what we've accomplished so far and present an opportunity for some early input for you on some certain key elements that will help us determine what value the plan can bring to the region, and in turn how TBARTA essentially places itself in the development of regional transit services across the 5 counties. That said, a little bit of a brief background, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ball, and please interrupt him with any and all questions that you have.
I guess that's the way we're going to do it. No, thank you,
Don't
Michael.
hold back.
Again, it's Bill Ball with Tyndall Oliver. Pleased to be here as the project manager for the Envision 2030 Regional Transit Development Plan. So what we want to do today is just kind of introduce you to the project. We started about 2 months ago, so we've accomplished some things already, and we've got a lot of things we're working on over the next few months. So it was a good time to introduce the project to the Citizens Advisory Committee, get some feedback, and answer some questions for you. So this is what we're going to cover in this brief presentation today. It's a unique opportunity for TBARTA. This is the first ever regional transit development plan for the Tampa Bay area. So it really presents opportunity for TBARTA to define, or better define, its role in the coming years and what that's going to evolve to be over the course of this 10-year planning horizon. What is a transit development plan? If some of you have served on local citizens advisory committees with the MPOs, you've probably been involved in reviewing transit development plans at the local level for each of the transit agencies. There are 3 key things that we accomplished with the transit development plan, and this one is the same for the regional focus. Number 1, in the state of Florida, it's a requirement to receive funding from the state for transit purposes. So that's our number one priority. Secondly, and even more important, it's an opportunity to develop the vision for where the TBARTA agency wants to go over the next 10 years and to put a strategic blueprint together to help us move in that direction. And then finally, TBARTA can use this as an opportunity, a tool for promoting not only the awareness of TBARTA, but also the awareness of the vision and where the agency wants to go. It's not a budget, it's not intended to be a capital improvement program. It is the focus on vision. There will be a lot of things in this plan that can be used by TBARTA for their annual budgeting process, but the focus here is vision and the blueprint to move in that direction. So these are the key general elements of a traditional transit development plan, especially in Florida, because this follows the specific requirements that are identified in the Florida statutes. Of course, we're going to follow this. The difference being is that regional emphasis, and we also have the benefit of pulling together all of the local transit development plans that have been done to help support the regional assessment and the development of this plan itself. And we also have the benefit, go ahead, Ellie.
We're getting some kind of feedback or something from this microphone. Maybe somebody wants to put it on mute.
Oh, on the phone?
Yeah, I'm getting a reverb back. I'm sorry.
Sounds like somebody's breathing.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And please continue breathing, but.
But put it on mute.
Okay.
Unless you have a question, of course.
Thank you, folks.
The other thing I'll mention is that we also have the benefit of the regional transit feasibility plan that was recently completed. While that was only the 3 of the 5 counties, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco, it has a lot of information and a regional transit vision network that we can also integrate into this process and then build with Manatee and Hernando on top of it. So these are the key elements of Envision 2030. We have guidance from the TBARTA Act, as well as the Florida statutes for transit development plans. So of course we will follow those. It's a 10-year planning horizon through 2030. And so this is the very first one for TBARTA, but once you've done one, you're required to do it in a major way, a major update every 5 years with progress reports submitted to the Florida DOT in the years in between. Of course, the TBARTA board will adopt the plan, and it's required to be submitted by September 1st in the year in which it's due. In this case, the first due date for TBARTA will be September 1 of 2020. You'll see a schedule in a second. We're gonna do it well in advance of that September 1 deadline, but that will be your initial deadline for TBARTA. Of course, the 5 county service area and the 5 transit agencies locally that exist in those counties will be a big part of this. And then this is the Envision 2030 team working with TBARTA staff. And Tyndall Oliver is the lead consulting firm, but we have 3 sub-consultants as well to support us in various aspects of the project as well. And then we are working closely with the technical advisory group, which Michael mentioned, and I'll highlight specifically who's part of that technical advisory group, which there are 12 members, 5 of which come from the transit operators themselves that are shown on this slide. We also have 2 Florida DOT districts involved, both District 1 and 7, so they each have representatives. We also have the workforce development boards, again, which Michael mentioned. There's 4 that exist in the 5 county area, so each of them have a representative on this group. And then finally, we also added a 12th member from the MPO staff directors so that the MPOs have representation on this group as well. So this is our schedule at this point. We're envisioning a 16-month schedule, but what this shows is a draft plan being done by January, February of early next year, and then a final adoption timeframe of April or May of next year. So I've got most of this calendar year to do the analysis, do outreach, and put together that Envision 2030 plan. And of course, we'll be coming back to the CAC periodically to give you updates along the way as well. You'll see we have a number of interim technical reports along the way so TBARTA can see our progress and also see what we're pulling together that would ultimately show up in the Envision 2030 plan. Project objectives. There's 5 most important project objectives on this slide. Number one is that we're going to make sure you comply with the requirements that are in the TBARTA Act and the TDP Florida statutes. We're going to take care of that. The remaining four are the most important to TBARTA though. Number one is establishing that transit vision that we talked about. Putting together the organizational and financial strategy for the next 10 years. So what is TBARTA going to be? What is their role going to be in regional transit? And what is the organizational and financial strategy for making that happen? The next one is important near-term objective, which is we need to identify some projects that are ready to be implemented if and when funding becomes available, regional transit projects. So one of our charges is to define those by the end of this calendar year, so they're ready to be moved forward when the time comes and the board is ready to push and implement projects, even before we've adopted this plan for that reason. And then finally, an action plan to help, again, step by step, what we need to do over the next several years to move us toward that vision that we identified. TBARTA's role, again, it all comes back to better defining what we see in the TBARTA Act and how we more clearly define it in Envision 2030. We need to understand how the TBARTA's role in transit operations, transit funding, policy, and collaboration with the local transit agencies. So the goal is to have this Envision 2030 plan lay out what that is going to be. One of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to look at some regional entities throughout the country as examples of best practices that we can learn from for application here in the Tampa Bay area. One of the ones that we were looking at early, and we're pulling together a number of these, but the Atlanta region is a great case study. A little over a year ago, they established the ATL, which is the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority. So they've changed their whole regional transit structure in Atlanta that's being implemented now. A lot of similarities to the Tampa Bay region, although more entities involved, multiple transit systems, multiple counties. They've established transit districts, they have a large board, and they have these 5 main responsibilities shown on the right of this slide. 2 I'll mention is that they are responsible for putting together a regional transit plan, just like we're doing right here, right now. And I'll mention transit funding as well. They do have an oversight role in all state and federal transit funding that comes to this region. So that's one example, and we can learn a lot from them as they implement their new structure and decide what makes most sense to learn from here in the Tampa Bay area. So we're in the process of identifying other case studies like this around the country that we can use as best practice examples to learn from here in the Tampa Bay area. Another element is defining what a regional transit project is. We do get some guidance from the TBARTA Act. It's more at a high level guidance, but they do provide a geographic definition as well. So straightforward regional transit project would be a connection across county boundaries. But it also includes maybe a project that starts within a county that would ultimately be the first phase of a project that does cross county boundaries. So we need a better definition that everybody agrees to solidify that moving forward so there's no confusion about what's considered regional versus local. We also have the element of identifying regional activity centers, and if it clearly connects to regional activity centers, probably would be considered a regional transit project as well. The one thing I'll mention, again, goes back to the regional transit feasibility plan that included Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco. They defined a regional transit network that's a great starting point for us to evaluate what's regional, and then of course add to the network for both Manatee and Hernando's counties. I mentioned this earlier. These are the early implementation projects. It was a clear charge from David Green and the TBARTA staff to identify these projects that could be ready to go if and when funding were to become available. So we intend to, here's some examples that we've identified at this point, but we're working closely with the local transit agencies and in the public input process as to potential regional transit projects in the near term that could be pursued if funding were to become available. I'll mention a couple of the examples we have here. The Skyway Connection, currently Manatee County Area Transit operates a limited service across the Skyway between Manatee and Pinellas counties. If that service were expanded, it could be a more viable commuting alternative. As it stands, it's not a level of service that would accommodate commuters very well. But that's one example where we could invest in expanding that service to be a commuting connection between those two counties. Other examples may be expanding or adding ferry service. I'm sure you've heard of the demonstration between Hillsborough and Pinellas that's going on now, and the thoughts of expanding that. And this week, the discussions were coming out for that as well. More service to the airport. I know PSTA has that service now, but maybe expanding or providing connections from other locations in the region. And then another one possibility is express bus from the counties to the north, Hernando and Pasco, down to Hillsborough and Pinellas to the job centers down this way. So these are just a few examples that we're looking at, looking for other ideas as we identify potential projects that would be ready for implementation in the near term. Next steps, we're working on the baseline conditions and evaluating existing services, which is going to be working on some interesting infographics that will bring together the local transit services and their performance to look at how that comes together and aggregates into a regional assessment of how we provide transit services throughout Tampa Bay. We're looking at the peer region selection. I mentioned the ATL, the Atlanta, as an example today. So we're working on identifying 5 other areas around the country that we can learn from as well. And we've been doing these early presentations to increase awareness of the project and to just inform and look for opportunities for input as we move forward with the evaluation. These are some of the presentations that we have done or are about to do in the next month or 2.
I got a question, Bill.
Sure, Kevin.
How was the response from the TMA's leadership group when you did a preliminary?
I'm actually presenting at their next meeting. I've not presented to them yet. They're well aware of this project that's happening, but we haven't presented yet. The ones we have are the Transit Management Committee, which was basically the technical advisory group, the staff directors we presented to, and of course the CAC today. So the TBARTA board is going to be not this month, but in May, and we want to present to the TBARTA board before we then go to these other groups.
I just missed the last meeting, so I didn't know if I missed something. That's why I was asking.
Sure. The last thing I'll mention is staff has set up a web page on the TBARTA website. So there's information about Envision 2030 there. We'll be adding information over time. There's also a place to add your name to a distribution list for notices and information about upcoming public information meetings and other meetings like this that will be going on. So please, you'll probably get it anyway as being a member of the CAC, but also refer to the webpage itself if you want to get direct information about this project. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions? There were several other things in the attachment material. It includes the public involvement plan.
I can say a few words about that if you want, Bill.
Well,
Is that
unless there are questions on what was been presented so far.
No, I like that.
Okay. Yes.
We have a draft public involvement plan that we've worked on with TBARTA staff. It's been formally now submitted to the Florida DOT. As part of that TDP development process, they must approve your public involvement plan before you move forward too far in the process. So that process is underway. But what we anticipate in the early outreach, and most likely most of those outreach meetings will be in May. These are meetings where we want to, we're out there to listen and to facilitate a survey to get input into what the needs assessment for regional transit connections might be. Because of that, of what we're looking for, we're going to focus on farmers markets like the Wiregrass Market, or actually the train day in Hillsborough is a great one where there's a lot of pass-by traffic. The Bradenton Farmers Market, the Brooksville Farmers Market, where there's going to be a lot of people already, so that we can try to get them to fill out the survey and give us some input along the way. So that will be the format for the first set of outreach meetings, one in each of the counties.
Are you looking to do like a MetroQuest survey along the way here?
The first round, we're just going to do a quick survey that folks would be willing to fill out on the tablet at these farmers markets. We're going to do that ourselves. What we envisioned is in the second round, which which is more like the September timeframe, would be a MetroQuest. If anybody's not familiar with that, they're a vendor that we can work with to design and lay out some interactive surveys online that will specifically allow us to get input on the types of projects or the corridors or the connections that we identified during this planning process. So that would be the second round towards the fall.
Right, so community groups, again, like neighborhood associations and the like, will you be reaching out at that level, or are you looking, more towards an activity center?
The formal outreach is more towards a major event in each county, but there is opportunities for you to talk to staff or request from staff presentations like a speakers bureau, which we can try to address each time that they're requested. If you look through the public involvement plan, you will see a lot of the organizations that you're talking about. And if you think we're missing an organization that we should try to target in one way or another, just let us know so we add that to the list.
Not seeing other questions, let me ask one. Will you be reaching out to people that you currently are using transit, like at transit centers, on some of the major routes? There's far different characteristic to the routes. There's the tourist routes on the beach. There's the inter-county routes.
Streetcar.
Tampa streetcar. The circulators.
I should mention that one of the first things that we're doing, this is probably the first thing I should have said about outreach. There's been so much public outreach done in the last 2 years as part of the regional transit feasibility plan and the local transit development plans. There's a lot of information that we need to take advantage of that's already there. And then, from those local TDPs, we have onboard surveys from each of the transit agencies that have been conducted within the last 1 or 2 years. So there's just a plethora of information from those surveys that we can start with. And then we can decide if there's anything we're missing that we should then target over the next few months.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ball. I appreciate the presentation. I have a lot of questions, most of which are probably premature. But I did notice on one of your slides that you have compliance with the TBARTA Act as one of your study areas. My question is, will you be looking at that act in a way to make recommendations on how it might be modified to better improve the effectiveness of TBARTA?
That's certainly on the table as we go through the planning process to how TBARTA may want to then talk to the legislature about potential revisions. It's certainly a possibility.
Okay, I would hope you would do that.
Yep.
As this group well knows, TBARTA has been hampered almost since inception by its inability to operate and fund an actual system.
Right.
Thank you.
I stand behind your comment on that as well. I would love to see us go to a level that would take it to legislature and make some serious changes that.
Certainly a big part of our recommendations should be policy recommendations, which leads back to what you're talking about.
Question. What percentage are we looking at capital funding versus maintenance and operational funding? Because that's where the operational funding and the maintenance are a problem for us.
Sure.
And we need to figure out a way to deal with that moving forward.
Well, to be honest, the funding sources aren't there for TBARTA right now.
Right.
So we will look at potential funding sources and the flexibility that each of those sources has as part of this planning process. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because if you're talking about state and federal grants in particular, they're
all capital.
All capital.
Right.
So we're always short on the operating side. With Hillsboro's situation has improved immensely with their sales tax because it has the flexibility for operating. Now we need to look at opportunities for TBARTA to have a similar situation. And we'll look at that as part of this. It's a challenge.
Anybody on the phone have questions? Any other?
No, not for me.
Any other questions from the group here?
Well, appreciate it. We're excited about this planning process, and I look forward to coming back once we've gone further into the meeting, and I'm sure you will have those questions then.
We'll
So-
be back each month, for each meeting.
So, yes, so when will you be back?
That's, we'll talk with staff about that, but there certainly will be an update at every one of your meetings, whether it's from staff or from me.
That sounds like a good segue for me to come in.
Yes. I was going to ask you, did we miss any questions?
No, not so far. But, I plan to go over a quick recap here. And, as with past meetings, if you have any questions that you don't get a chance to ask in the meeting, you can always send them by email as well. So, as Bill went over, we've come up with the branding for the project as Envision 2030. We have completed the project management plan as one of the first steps of the project to ensure accountability of the consultants. So we're keeping our eye on Bill and his team. And we've finalized that public involvement plan and submitted it to FDOT Districts 1 and 7, which is our first major deliverable for the project. And presently, we're waiting on concurrence from the department, which Bill stated, we can't get too far along in the outreach process without having that approval from them. So something Bill also mentioned that I'd like to emphasize again is the connection between this project and the regional transit feasibility plan, in that was the starting point for identifying regional projects through Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco counties, which you recall, identified over 20 projects to establish the vision for what regional transit looks like in Tampa Bay. So one of the biggest hurdles I think we have for this is working to expand that vision so it includes Manatee and Hernando counties as well. Next steps we have, we do have a project page dedicated to the project. It's on the TBARTA site. If you go to planning projects, and then there's a little section for regional transit development plan Envision 2030. All current updates are being provided there. All deliverables are being posted. And as Bill mentioned too, we have a comment box that they put together. Thank you again for that, where we're taking as much feedback and input on any and all aspects of this plan as possible. So the next time I think we'll see Tyndale with this group could be June. And that would be to present the baseline conditions report that's being worked on right now for your review and input, pending that it's going to be ready. So that we can have an update on by email sometime here between now and before the meeting, and verify whether or not Tyndale is going to be able to have enough information to present. That sound fair, Bill?
Yes, it sounds great, Mike.
So we are planning initial public outreach events, as he stated as well, 5 events, 1 in each county, as a part of phase 1 for public outreach, which the course of those will be mostly in May. So what we were hoping we could count on you all for is once we have that established list, we'll share it with you. And if you could help us get the word out about those events in each of the 5 counties, make sure we've got maximum participation, and help us distribute that survey as well that we're working on, that would be a great help to getting a general awareness about the project and a great place to start from in providing direction for where we go. So Bill, you want to talk about, because we have a recommended list, but maybe for the benefit of the group, a little bit detail about what the focus of those initial outreach meetings will be.
You're addressing that to Bill Ball.
Bill Ball, yeah.
I think I hit on
Sorry,
it briefly, but But what we're recommending to Michael and staff is that we focus on the farmers market forums, because there's generally a lot more pass-by traffic, so that we can provide information about the project, and also try to get them to fill out a quick survey on our tablets that we'll have out in the field, or we'll give them a little project card where they could go fill it out online as well. So it's really an information distribution forum, as well as trying to get input about regional transportation needs that could be met by transit. So it's going to be like a brief 10-question survey that we're drafting right now that won't take very long to complete, and that we could get them to stop for a moment to fill out if we aggressively pursue them at the markets. I think that's what you're looking for, right, Michael?
Satisfactory, yes.
So we've sent some recommendations to staff just earlier this week. So we're trying to finalize which locations those will be. And as soon as we have a completed list, we will have a flyer generated that will go to all of you as well, to tell you when and where those specific outreach meetings will occur. We're essentially just going to have a booth at these markets, though, so it's not like a presentation. It's more of a booth where pass-by traffic, we get them to stop and we give them information, and they give us feedback.
What about some of the festivals, like Rib Fest, or used to be Rib Fest in St. Pete? Is it still going on, or?
I think it's the last year.
Yeah.
It was the last year.
But
there are others, yeah. I mean, Saturday morning market is
The one in St. Pete is great.
yeah, no, that runs through May. So
It's perfect in May.
Yeah.
That's why we were shooting for like Wiregrass and Pasco. They have their Saturday market as well. It's not as frequent, so we have to go to the weekend that it's occurring. And then the Brooksville Farmers Market, and then the Bradenton Farmers Market, and then Hillsborough, we were looking at Train Day, which is toward the latter part of May, which is a well-attended event as well. It's, at the train station in downtown Tampa.
They have the Blueberry Festival in Brooksville, I think is next week, yeah.
Next
How
week.
quick you can be ready.
Yeah, that one's may be tough to get to.
A lot of people, even other counties come to that, so.
Yeah, it's regional. It draws regionally, right? There was a couple events that were in April that we couldn't get ready to do. So that's why we're targeting May, trying to get May, because it's good timing before school's out in the summer too.
A lot of snowbirds are gone too, so you get people who live here.
Yep.
I'm thinking of Last Friday and Clearwater, some of the events up in Dunedin.
If you have any that are occurring in May that you think would be worth looking at, let us know. And also, we'll look for forums in the fall as well. So if you have ideas that we should add to our list for that, late August, September, especially September timeframe, we would look for those ideas as well.
One of the things you might want to look into too is a lot of the emergency management areas, when you start talking hurricane season and all that, September might be a time to captivate.
When the hurricane season's.
Yes, because, people are thinking evacuation, transit plays a role in that.
Okay.
Good suggestion.
What ways are we reaching out to the lower economic neighborhoods?
Right. I think our assessment of the local public involvement will help us identify where we might be coming up short, and then we could define what's the best way to reach them. So we want to assess what we already have, and even try to assess where that information is coming from, so that we know what areas that you're talking about that we should specifically target in future opportunities. So I don't have the answer yet, because I think we need to know what we're missing before we decide the best way to reach them.
And we want to reach different age groups as well.
I think the benefit we have is the Regional Transit Feasibility Plan. I mean, Jennifer Straw's in the audience. She was significantly involved in that outreach effort. There's so much information there that we need to see what we have before we we spend too much time on getting information that we could already use from the work that's already been done.
And I'm working to get that to Elizabeth actually right now.
You know,
Let's go to
Yeah,
Bob
Bill,
first.
do you plan on possibly talking to Bucks and Rays and Lightning Management about what they see?
Not sure at this point, but we already are scheduled to talk to the Tampa Bay Partnership, which has all of the large businesses represented on that committee. So that would be our starting point for reaching out to businesses. They're obviously very interested in TBARTA, and they're very interested in Vision 2030. So I do have that scheduled presentation, I think it's in June or July. So they wanted to wait until we were a little further in the planning process, so we had more content to present.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Michael, anything else to close this one off?
Quick question.
Nothing
Oh,
further from
whoops,
me,
we do
Mr.
have
Chair.
one question.
Oh, good.
What is the time frame for the outreach?
Well, the immediate outreach is we're trying to do before classes out, school is out for the summer. So we're looking at May, early June at the latest. And then once school's back in, we would target late August and September for the second round.
There is, the city of St. Pete is about to embark on a citywide vision process. And there'll be a number of events, and there's probably a way to get this operation into those kind of events. And, they should be well attended by a good cross-section of the community.
Okay, we can add that.
That should be this fall.
If it's not on our list already, we will add that as well.
where can we get that list?
There is a list in your agenda packets. Is it not in there, Michael, this time?
Just keep flipping.
But it may have already been updated since it was in your packet, so we can work with staff on sending you the latest.
It's fine, as long as it's in here, that's great.
There. Ready?
Yep.
Right, is it there?
Yeah, it's on page.
Business
3 or 4.
organization.
So that was the latest at the time you received the packet. There might be more events on our current list, so we can get that out to you.
No sports.
Okay. Shall we move on?
Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item, Michael, I see is lined out.
Yeah, we had originally planned to bring to this group for your review prior to bringing to policy a resolution pertaining to support for dedicated lanes through I-275 for the BRT PD&E project. After some discussion with the executive director and with the executive team at FDOT, we decided to change the order a little bit of how this flows through committees. So the resolution is going first to the policy, and then it's going to go to the board. And the reason it's not coming to CAC first is that we can't ask you to endorse something that is fluid right now. It's gonna get changed in all likelihood when it goes through the policy and the board channels. So what we plan to do instead is bring it back to you in June and have you look at it and express your support once it's already done. Unfortunately, that's just the way that the timing works out, since there's a lot of different opinions about this right now. There's concerns on the part of FDOT that, we don't want to preclude any of the results of the PD&E, so to speak. So it's a bit of a sensitive issue that the policy committee needs to tackle first, and then the board can discuss.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Kelly.
Michael, will those meetings be public meetings, the policy meeting and the, I know the board meeting is.
All of our meetings are.
When are they scheduled? when is that scheduled for?
So the next policy committee meeting is going to be next Friday. I'm sorry, this Friday, the 19th. Time flies. And that's being held at PSTA.
Yeah, would be.
So the policy
Likewise, the
committee-
TBARTA board meeting is on April 26th, 9:30 a.m., also being held at PSTA.
And that's when you're
So
going to
they
be...
will be public meetings and they will be live streamed. So, the resolution has been included in the policy committee packet. It'll be included in the board meeting packet as well. So there will be opportunity to provide comment on it in those meetings.
The meeting is in 2 days.
Yes. And the agenda is on the website for the meeting Friday. And that includes, it does include the draft resolution.
It does, yes.
It's mostly whereases. I mean, I can read the therefore be it resolved if you want to. But, therefore be it resolved by the TBARTA Governing Board that 1, TBARTA recognizes the opportunity and the need for a regional transit service that is competitive with and offers advantages over driving, and resolves to implement fully dedicated lanes throughout the entire project corridor. And 2, in coordination with FDOT and stakeholders throughout the PD&E community vetting process, TBARTA will ensure the benefits of implementing fully dedicated lanes throughout the entire corridor are communicated and supported. So that's what the current draft is. I think I hear from Michael that there's some discussions that will be going on at the board level before that moves further. So.
Right, and a part of it is because, FTA has some pretty strict administrative rules, about precluding results of a PD&E before you're getting into actual project development. And, with the sensitivity of this, we don't want to, take any additional risks in having something endorsed or showing support for something before all of those options are fully considered by the policy committee and the board. So with the ultimate goal of the PD&E, which we're going to talk about shortly, being the capital investment grant, we want to make sure that, we're being as careful as possible leading up to that point.
Can you guys hear me on the phone? This is Hoyt.
Yes, Hoyt, go ahead.
If I may comment, Michael, and perhaps you can, correct me if you feel like this statement's off base, but I don't really understand how us voting on this now really affects the process, because, theoretically we could vote on this multiple times, and if it changes a little bit, those changes may be what pulls people from a no to a yes vote or a yes to a no vote. So I don't know that I love the idea. The way that I understand it, that we are, almost not even, we're getting this farther along in the policy process when more things are going to be decided, and so to me, that lends itself more to rubber stamping what has been put forth than perhaps, providing more nuanced feedback on what the policy actually is.
Well, if I understand, Hoyt, your comment, you didn't see an issue with us actually bringing this to the CAC prior to bringing it to the policy and board committee in its current form. Is that getting down to the point?
Yeah, to me, because I feel like, even if the policy changes, okay, well, we vote on it again. I mean, that's just kind of my, I guess what I don't like is my perception that this is going to, be further down the road where the cart can't be stopped, so to speak, before we're going to have an opportunity to weigh in on it. So maybe you can address that concern.
Sure. Well, I mean, certainly understand the purpose of the resolution, and that's really TBARTA's position on what we would like to see from an aspirational point of view with this project. This being something that the chair had requested we consider, we wanted to make sure that, well, they wanted to make sure first that the policy and board had the chance to fully discuss it, and in all likelihood, probably bring it back for some tweaking, because we're going to want some input from the district secretary at the board meeting as well. So this is just a part in their minds of the vetting process, and at the right point, certainly, we're not going to get too far along in that process, whether it actually evolves into something like a policy, which would probably be crossing that line with FTA of precluding any kind of results prior to the study being done. But we would bring this back to the CAC for your consideration and support once we have it thoroughly vetted through the board policy and with SDOT as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I don't know that I entirely agree with his philosophy, but the explanation you put forth makes sense.
Bob Whitmire.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think as a policy statement, this is very laudatory, but I wonder fiscally if it's short-sighted. I'm thinking of a, I guess, a Democratic plan called Green something, where people say, how are you going to pay for all that, So if we have a policy statement that it is basically unrealizable, what does that do to the credibility of TBARTA to say we can propose something, but it never can be built? I mean, I don't know how you include, a disclaimer in there that given the fiscal landscape that this is achievable. But I think there ought to be some kind of a hook there that clarifies that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, in all likelihood, it could be as simple as under the now therefore first bullet saying subject to the results of the project development and environment study. Or it may not be that simple, but that's something we want to make sure, policy and board are aware of, the potential, for this to go through, that it involves financial feasibility as well. So all those bases need to be covered with them, and we really think the district secretary needs to have the opportunity to speak directly to the board as well when that's being considered.
Yeah, we don't want to get crosswise with our district secretary, at least not without really thinking about it. I do have a question that's sort of related to this. We had talked previously about saying that we wanted to have some input into the PD&E process, and I would describe our input as the aspirational customer interface expectations, or how this would work from the customer's viewpoint. And when will that opportunity be present? Maybe it's coming up after the award of the contract?
Yeah, so that's a good lead in to, I think, what's our next update item on the agenda under TBARTA activity. Would you like to go into that, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, and we can come back to the Flamingo Pass. So, go ahead.
So, yeah, that's exactly right. So, we're still in the procurement phase with the Catalyst PD&E. This is the $5 million that FDOT set aside, which is all consultant fees, to look at the entire 41-mile corridor, develop a locally preferred alternative, go through the whole NEPA process, all the requirements that we're going to need to meet to enter into an agreement for a capital investment grant. So the opportunities for input from this group and really from multiple stakeholders, including the public, is pretty much going to be fluid throughout the entire project. Without having an agreement in place, which is going to be considered at the Finance Committee this Friday and ultimately the board next Friday, like with Envision 2030, we're going to be putting together a public involvement plan that's going to outline all of the key points for input. So, that will pretty closely follow state and federal requirements for this process, which, one of the first things that's going to be done as a part of the scope that we're planning anyway is an alternatives workshop, which is going to go back through the whole concept that was put together from the regional transit feasibility plan and get public input on that. So I think that'll probably be the first opportunity for this group as well to consider that information and weigh in on what your thoughts are on the direction that we might want to go with this. Of course, there won't be a whole lot of information available at that time on what's financially feasible and what isn't, but it is definitely the right time for aspirational level input. So, won't have that date or time frame until we're through with the procurement process and we've got some project management procedures in place, but certainly that is something that's going to be a standing item on all future CAC meetings moving forward.
Okay, Michael, I copied from the Finance Committee the action item that's proposed for this Friday and had it distributed to the members. It's this single sheet of paper that is approval for the 3-year contract WSP. And I think during our preliminary agenda meeting, we talked about we really don't have access to the process that the staff went through in coming up with a recommendation for the selection of this vendor. This is pretty significant award of a contract. If they do it right, it'll be wonderful. If it's, and so I just wanted to share that with you anyway. I guess if there's any comments by people on the phone or in the room.
Well, let me jump in here, Mr. Chair, and say, while that's public information, since it has been shared through the Finance Committee, and again, will be ultimately concluded by the board, but please consider that we are what's referred to in the procurement world in a cone of silence. So we need to be very careful about anything that we discuss regarding this prior to having any kind of recommendation from the Finance Committee, and then again, ultimately a decision by the board.
Okay.
That's not awkward.
Right. So can we ask a question or not?
Yeah, right?
Ask the question, but we may not be able to get an answer.
This is Alan Garman, Mike. Is that typical of your RFQs that you only get one supplier? Is there not some kind of practice in there if you only get one to throw it out and relook at it again and try to get more?
Yeah, there are procurement practices that give direction on, if you've got 1 or 2 suppliers or responses within an RFP or an RFQ and how to proceed with that. I can't speak specifically to it. Our Acting Procurement Director Al Burns with PSTA has been making sure we have all the T's crossed and I's dotted within that process.
There are so many concerns. So many concerns. Well, just from a public standpoint, if we're only dealing with one, you know, as you mentioned, there's just one. Why is there just one? Why don't we have more? Is it that specific that we only have one vendor? And how is this going to play with the public? I'm concerned about that.
So I couldn't catch if that was a question for me.
Yeah, kind of. I'm concerned about public, you know, what the public is going to feel about this.
They're global too.
Yeah.
Mike, I didn't do any background research on this, but what's their track record? What are they good for, and where have they done it?
I don't have the information in front of me right now. You know, again, I, as much as I would like to share, you know, that information, we are in that cone of silence right now. You know, they did provide in their proposal their track record with similar projects as we asked all possible proposers to do in the RFQ. You know, they abided and did exactly what we asked them to do.
This is Travis, Norton, Pinellas County. The one thing I did see on this one is just similar to what happened in St. Petersburg with the water ferry service. It's very particular on who can operate those. There's not, you know, you had some folks in Clearwater, they're upset that they weren't included in it, but they don't know how to operate ferry services like that. What I'm getting at with this one is this a very particular set of PD&E that only a few firms globally can do, or in America can do. That's my question on this. Or is this something many companies can do?
Yeah, thanks, Travis. I think your assessment and comparison is right. You know, this project is a bit of a unicorn, and you know, it's a very long corridor that's looking at a lot of different possibilities and potential operating scenarios as well for some kind of premium transit service, which, you know, there's a lot of companies out there that can go through the process of developing locally preferred alternatives, but certainly not a lot that can go all the way insofar as developing that plan to say, here's how you can finance it, you know, going through and being politically connected within the region and developing those you know, interlocal agreements or memorandums of understanding to, you know, share, you know, maintenance facilities and things of that nature that are really essential to the implementation of a project like this. So yeah, it's unique, and certainly the number of firms that were capable or would be capable of fulfilling all the elements of the scope that we asked for are very limited.
Thank you. And WSP USA Incorporated, do we have a profile of them? I just see the action item, but I don't see a profile. Do we have that anywhere? Or of their background?
There's background information available in their proposal, which unfortunately falls under the cone of silence currently under procurement procedures set under state law. So we won't be releasing that until after a recommendation is made.
Mr. Chair, if I may say this, Michael, I'm on their website right now, which is WSP.com, and there is quite a bit of information of exactly what you were just asking. They do have an active transportation department. You can get on there and see it. They show some of their projects. There's sectors under roads, bridges, highways, road assessment. It's pretty well listed once you get through it.
Thanks.
Well, on their website, they definitely have a lot of information that covers all those bases. So, they're a very well-rounded firm. They're all over the world. They're not just a Florida firm or even a firm operating in the United States. They're all over the world. So, they've got all kinds of experiences to back up with every kind of project that you can imagine.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, this is Bill. The only question I have is that some of these engineering firms can be great on doing the process for FTA, which is wonderful, and that's the primary reason you're paying them. But do they get out and understand the community experience, like the 275 going north out of Tampa, the Ybor City, the impacts of that, and so I think that's more what I would be looking at and interested in their experience, that they don't just go off and do the mechanical things and miss what's really happening out on the streets. I guess that's more of an editorial comment than a question, so I apologize for that. Any other thoughts about this agenda item? Okay.
Well, thank you all for your input and questions. Sorry I can't share more at this time, but certainly there will be more information to share very shortly.
Well, I think it was very interesting that we had this discussion. I'm glad we did. Thank you for your comments. Let's go back, if we can, to the Flamingo passes and the transit user experience follow-up. And that was really something that was an action item from the previous meeting, where we said it would be good for us to have the opportunity to ride the system and use the system as regular riders. And we were offered the opportunity to maybe get a Flamingo pass and try to use that. A Flamingo pass is basically I think this is sort of like an employee pass that you can use to ride as much as you want. And it would be available throughout the region where the Flamingo pass is accepted, which would be Hillsborough and Pinellas, and then eventually Pasco. Am I sort of close to being right, Michael?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you're spot on.
And the action in order to take the next step was to provide a picture and your certain identification information to staff. And I hope somebody other than I have done that.
I did.
So
do we get our pass today?
Why don't I give an update on that?
Great.
On where we are. And thank you for giving that overview, because I realized, and I think that there are some members present this month that were not in the February meeting when this topic first came up. So following on that, almost a month ago now, a request for information went out to the committee asking for a photo, something that can be used in the personalized card, and your address as well, which is essentially what HART needs to put together a Flamingo pass. So we did get responses. We didn't get them from everybody. So what was provided was sent over to HART, and the cards will be ready on Tuesday of next week. So
You know,
With
that
there
blows my
being a
weekend,
last
Michael.
time.
Me too. I'm staying downtown Tampa this weekend. I'm gonna take the streetcar to Ybor and the whole bit.
Well, the streetcar is free.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry to hamper those plans. But I'm sure there will be other opportunities to use it between next Tuesday and then the June meeting. So what we were going to do, and I haven't discussed this with staff yet, but I'm sure Jennifer or somebody wouldn't have a problem maybe picking up those passes when they're ready. And we can either have you pick them up from the TBARTA office, or we can mail them out to you using the address that you provided to us in response to the request.
I see head nods to that latter option.
Oh,
I think
so
that
mail
would
it.
be the
Okay,
easiest.
yeah. If we're talking about transit here, let's save on trips and let the USPS, let the post office do all that work. So I do have a couple of members that I have not received any information yet. For the good of the group, would you like to go through who we're waiting on information from?
Yes, the cone of shame, please.
All right, not to call anybody out here, but Alan Garman, I heard you're in the meeting. I haven't gotten anything from you, sir.
Correct.
Richard Bedford.
Bob just kicked me.
Yeah.
I don't think Richard's in the meeting today.
Right. And after this meeting, we'll send out an email as well to these individuals asking for that information if they still plan to participate. So, Travis, Leo, you're on that list as well.
It's in the mail.
Dakota promise.
Hey, we can take selfies now, you know, and just.
They can take a picture here at PSTA. They're all set up for it.
So, depending on how quickly you get back to me, I may be able to have everybody's passes done by this upcoming Tuesday. So, I would expect them shortly after you get me the information coming to you in the mail.
Great. Wonderful. Just as an example, as far as experience, I just tried to plan my day so that I could come to the regular PSTA board meeting here a week or two ago. And I was looking online just at 7 a.m. to see what time I have to leave to arrive at the 9 o'clock meeting. And it told me I had to have left
The night before.
a little bit, 10 minutes before 7 o'clock. But that part of that was to walk to the stop. But that's the kind of experience that I think is useful for people that are dealing with a transportation plan they have. So, okay. So let's move to the TBARTA website redesign. Michael, do you want to introduce that one?
Yes, and Mr. Jadek and Ms. Raskin will be joining me for this update as well. So I'll kick it off here. As the title of the update suggests, TBARTA is getting a new website. We have contracted with SKQ, who also updated PSTA's website, to take a look at the existing site we have as a baseline for the kind of information and functionality we need to provide as a public agency, as well as ensure we're able to provide intuitive usability and accessibility, mobile friendliness, and of course an aesthetically pleasing design that's both easy to navigate and engaging for users. So we kicked off this project in February with SKQ, developed a list of necessary design elements. And a part of that is making sure, as a special district of the state of Florida, we're meeting all the requirements that are specified for us under statute. There is an act that has all of those requirements listed out explicitly. And we're going through and making sure that Americans with Disabilities Act requirements for websites are met as well, which our legal counsel, Brent Noor-Holland, has provided guidance for us on that. So using those requirements, FKQ has provided a site map. It's not the greatest thing to look at, but I have included it in your packets, just to show how the usability of the site is going to flow from the home page down to the main categories and then the subcategories. Of course, within those subcategories, they'll be populated with relevant content and assets that we have, such as any kind of plans, photos, and the like. So right now, we're in the process of actually reviewing the assets we have, which includes everything from web copy to the master plan from 2015 to Envision 2030 stuff, as well as copy and going through those and updating them against what is in that site map. So, as I mentioned, Chris and Cindy, who you met earlier, welcome to TBARTA as new staff. And I wanted them to take this opportunity as well, since they're heavily involved, deeply involved in this project, to possibly share some additional updates with you on that. So maybe we can start with Chris, our new Director of Communications. He's actually going to be taking the lead on the project from here forward. So Chris, if you're prepared and willing, take it away.
I appreciate that, Michael. Thanks very much. I only take a couple of minutes. I've met a few of you, but I am the incoming communications director for TBARTA, and very appreciative of that opportunity. I've been here for most of the last 20 years, as I mentioned earlier. Grew up in Ohio, so you know I come from good stock. And been here with the exception of moving to Louisville, Kentucky for a couple years back in 2001. My wife and I have been here for the past 20 years. Regarding the website, I will tell you as an outsider, because my background is not in transit and transportation. It's in news media. I was the news director at ABC Action News. I was an executive producer for Fox 13. Most recently, I worked with Bay News 9 as well. I did, in between all that, I was a VP of communications for a Tampa attorney, Richard Sale, and worked for him for about 6 years. So I have a combination of experience in broadcast media, news media, corporate communications, and I have a master's degree from USF in strategic communications as well. So put that all in the mix, and I applied for this position, and I'm very fortunate to be here with that. I can't offer much more on the website. Michael gave you a great overview of that. I'll only say this, as an outsider coming in, when I was talking this over, meeting with Cindy and meeting with David and talking about my vision, the website is really a representation of what the organization is and what it does. We're working to build world-class regional transit here in the Tampa Bay region. Likewise, that message needs to be conveyed by a website that reflects the same thing. And the old website did a great job, but I don't know how old it is. It's maybe a decade old. Cindy can tell you more about that. And if you go back and look at it, it's become cluttered. It's difficult to see the message. And there's a lot. It's almost become like, I lived from up north. I had a basement. What happened in the basement? You threw all the stuff down there you didn't want to get rid of. Well, that website has in many ways become that. TBARTA did a lot of things, especially about 10 years ago. A lot of that is still on there, and it's dated. It's not relevant to what we are today as a transit authority, not even transportation authority as well too. So cleaning that up and making sure that the right message is out there, that this is not only a tool that people can use for information, but by which we can communicate and properly represent what TBARTA is. That's what I'm looking at. So I am now taking this over from Michael. It's only day 8 for me, so I can't provide you a whole lot more. The next time, though, I plan to come back here, and as we get to some designs, be happy to show you what the designs are going to look like. But we have not even gotten anything from FKQ at this point. I've sent them up. I know David has also sent them a couple of sites that they like. I will tell you it's very clean, contemporary, less of the cluttered look that really was in vogue 15, 20 years ago. Websites were designed to put everything on there that you can to show that you're doing a lot of stuff. That has really kind of changed. So I think you'll be pleased with it, and I look forward to sharing more information with you as the site develops. Any questions? All right.
Comments, questions? I just would remind you that the website is a good place to find historical information. It doesn't have to be at the top, but if it's to archives or something, sometimes that is really helpful. Like at one time there was interstate of transit video that FDOT had put together years ago, and it's really quite good about talking about the future of of this region and some of the reasons why there's a need to do something better. So there might be some nuggets that you would find out there. I don't even know if it's on the website, but some of that, let's maybe blow the dust off something in the basement.
That's a good
Basement,
point.
we don't have
Yeah.
basements here.
Now, that's a good point. I will tell you this too. Anything that I'm not arbitrarily going through and deciding what lives and what doesn't go. I'll make recommendations. But Michael has tremendous institutional knowledge. Cindy, everybody else does. There are reasons why we put things on the website, what needs to be on there. It's a collaboration determining what we're going to put on there and keep.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Cindy, do you have the final word?
Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Raskin, Director of Commuter Services for TBARTA. Week 5 at TBARTA. Before that, I have almost 21 years at PSTA in the marketing department, the last 4 years as their communications and marketing director, which is why I jumped right in and started sticking my nose in the website development process. So I really don't have anything to add. For the most part, FKQ, I was part of the web redesign process for PSTA's website. And FKQ is very thoughtful and creative. The content management system that they're recommending is very easy to use, very flexible. It'll be super easy for us to make updates and add content and create archives, whatever we want to do moving forward. So we're really excited. Lots of new staff at TBARTA, and we're all going to be working really hard to put some really great projects together and keep on moving forward into the future. Yeah, welcome. Thank
And
you.
I'll jump in here too and state my appreciation for Cindy and Chris already. While they're very new, they've jumped in with both feet and hit the ground running. And the previous director of communications and director of commuter services. Oh wait, there were none. That was me. is very thankful to have a greater distribution of work and a team actually now working on all these great things for TBARTA. So thank you to you both.
Let's go to Bill Roberts first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Cindy. Look forward to good things. I'm glad to hear you mention that the new website will be easily updated by staff, because I think that's a critical piece of keeping people engaged in that website.
Agreed.
The current website still refers to us as a 7-county regional authority, very outdated, and it identifies Ray Shermonte as the executive director. I think those are inexcusable errors that I'm sure we'll be able to correct more easily.
Absolutely. Some of those things we're trying to correct as an interim, because it's still going to be a couple of months before the whole site's ready to roll out. But we're working on making sure we understand how that old content management system works, so we don't blow up the website.
Thanks.
I just wanted to make sure that we got your contact information, if you wouldn't mind sending out
A couple
a class
cards,
email.
business cards already, thanks to Cindy, so I'll be happy to drop a few off.
We are also, if you guys aren't already following our social media, we have been posting daily on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and I invite you to follow along and help us share our content, so thanks.
I really have to learn how to use that.
It's a secret, you don't want to learn.
Any questions from those on the phone? Comments? The next item on the list is agency staffing. Michael, do you have any other breaking news?
Well, I suppose I do. Exciting times at TBARTA. As you met our Director of Communications and Director of Community Services just now, and I think you probably are all familiar with our Executive Assistant, Jennifer Mendez, as well. But we've also recently added a Senior Accountant. So she's on staff now and making sure that TBARTA is maintaining and keeping a close eye and managing its finances very well. We put out an opportunity for a senior planner about a month and a half ago and have agreed on someone that's going to be starting actually this upcoming Monday too. So we'll have, thankfully, another planner joining us. And adding to that, there is also a current opportunity present for another principal planner So that's posted on the TBARTA website right now, if you can find it. So, you know, adding to that, it's on APA, American Planning Association, AMPO, otherwise the Association for Metropolitan Planning Organizations. And we could be interviewing candidates as early as next week. So again, exciting times for expanding the staff with our team.
Okay, thank you. And of course, we welcome Nikki to our meeting here and our presence. So, legislative activity update.
Yep, all right, I'll jump in here. So our request for appropriations from the State Transportation Trust Fund has made it into the Senate budget proposal. We are looking at a recurring sum of somewhere a little north or south of $1.5 million. Of course, that's a drop in the bucket in relation to the $90.3 billion budget that's being brought to the full chamber this year. But it's a big deal for TBARTA. So it's went through joint committee and everything already. As I said, you know, it's in the Senate Bill 2500, which is the final bill for the budget before the governor signs it. The session is scheduled to Synodia on May 3rd, so we're going to find out relatively quickly whether or not Governor DeSantis is going to sign and secure that funding for the agency. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Don't see any here. You also had in the agenda packet a legislative update for people's review.
I did. So I did share a list of transportation bills and bills that have some effect in one way or another on transportation in Florida that are up for consideration this year. This is more of an FY item for you. If you're not aware of some of these bills already, there's quite a few of them out there. So this list that I provided actually comes from the MPO Alliance, which has a consortium of MPOs and puts together kind of an advocacy program for MPOs every single year. So there's a lot of detail in there. They've spelled out exactly what is in each bill, along with how supported it is, what committee it's currently in, and where its next stop is. So again, this is more of an FY item, but if you have any questions about any of the bills, if you've had a chance to review them specifically, you know, you can let me know, and I'll coordinate with either our lobbyist or the director of the MPOAC and get you more details.
Okay. Any questions? Next item is upcoming meetings and events. There's a list in our agenda packet. And a couple of examples of things coming up. One is the Future of the Regions Award, which will be on the same Friday as the TBARTA board meeting.
I have a question about that, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
You're talking about the 26th?
Yes.
I went to register. By any chance, is there a promo code, or do we just get an individual seat? Is anybody going? I mean, are we going as a group, or?
I have normally gone to that, but, sorry. I was planning on going to the TBARTA meeting.
Okay.
I don't know what the process is on that, but.
I tried to register online, and so it was you purchase a table where you can purchase an individual ticket.
Right.
Or there was a promo code. So I just didn't know if there was an option for a promo code, us being on the CAC, or if there was a group of us already, like if there was a table for the CAC already, or if I just needed to buy my own ticket.
Jennifer, can you find out, or can we check with, or Michael, can you check with TBARTA with the Regional Planning Council and
Sure, I
give
can,
us an
I'd
email
be
on
happy
that?
to reach out. Am I on? Okay. Be happy to reach out to Mr. Sullivan, the director of the TBRPC, and find out if there is a promo code for that, if there's any seats available for tables that have been purchased already. Obviously, with it being on the 26th, TBARTA staff will not be in attendance that day, at least that I'm aware of. But we'll check into it, and we'll share any information that comes from the TBRPC with you all very shortly.
Great, thanks.
Okay. All right. New business. Is there any new business to come before the body? Next item then is the items to report to the TBARTA board. I don't believe we have actually taken any recommended action to pass on to the board. Am I correct there? I see nods here. The next item is committee requests for the next meeting agenda. Are there things that you would like to have at the next meeting? I think we've heard, and this next meeting will be in June. So we've heard that the TDP, the Transit Development Plan will be coming back to us with an update then. And we'll probably know more about the catalytic project.
And then updates on the.
Mr. Chair, I can.
Oh.
Sorry, I heard somebody jumping in.
Oh, updates on the community outreach.
That's on the TDP, Transit Development Plan, what Mr. Bald had talked about.
That's right.
Michael, go ahead.
I was going to provide a couple of suggestions. I can't see nods in the room. I can just see the back of your heads in the live stream. But, you know, I mentioned during Mr. Ball's presentation that, you know, one of the things, if it's available, we'd like to bring back is a presentation of the baseline conditions for Tampa Bay that's going into the data for the Envision 2030 plan. You know, that's going to be a bit technical in nature, but I think it would be of value for us, especially since, you know, we're all involved in transit and especially becoming greater users of transit, to understand some of that context. It may help frame some of the narrative that's brought forward, maybe even within the Flamingo report. And that could be another item too, with the cards going out early next week. Any reports that are possibly ready to go, it'd be nice to have committee members share those with the group and maybe discuss and think about how that information could be used in some of the efforts that TBARTA is moving forward.
Okay.
And there's website updates. You know, we'll make sure to bring those back to everybody. We might even have a static design for you to look at, maybe even something that can be shared internally so that you can check out what the functionality we're proposing with the website is. You know, I can work with Chris on that. And of course, we'll have information in the next meeting about the PD&E Catalyst project as well, which, Mr. Chair, you already stated.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll call Ms. Raskin out because she's been working very hard on a lot of commuter assistance related activities. So there may be some information that she would like to share for the group, as it has been quite some time since we've brought anything related to carpool or vanpool to you.
I'd be happy to.
Okay. Before we leave, I'd like to make sure I ask Mr. Prindle, do you have anything that you'd like to see agendized in the future? Are you still with us?
No, not this time. If I come up with something, I can email.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. One other thing too, since it is discussing the early implementation projects, and I don't want to jump ahead of the board, but also the ferry service that falls under us as far as the request for dollars to implement that. If that's something that can be presented to us, or we can learn more about what their ask is, financial support from the private sector and the different, as well as government.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Dozier, do you have anything? If you're still with us? Nope. Okay. Is there anything else to come to this body?
Yeah, just to leave a good taste in our mouth, as Kelly pointed out, if you go to the WSP website, it does speak highly of their talents, of course, but specifically, one of their sectors is bus rapid transit. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have the link for it too. I found that one. Yeah, it's pretty
So
good. Yeah,
maybe
they're
they
solid.
know what they're doing.
Holding my breath.
And as a former director of software development, one of the primary documents in any kind of software development is the requirements document. I would hope that Ms. Raskin and Michael have developed that document that tells FKQ what they expect.
Okay. Good. Michael, do you have anything else?
No, Mr. Chair, that's all from me for today.
Oh, one important thing, what's the weather like?
Well, cold, colder than you all have right now. But yeah, it's not bad. And that's the report coming from the wife, so that's a good sign.
Okay.
But well, we got some snow over the weekend, and it's melted already. So no complaints.
Okay.
All right. Well, for those of you that are heading, oh, Cindy.
Sir, I just wanted to offer to Travis, and I'm sorry I lost your name, sir. If either of you would like to do a glamour shot in front of PSTA's blue wall, I'd be happy to take a picture, and we can text it right to Michael so he can get you your flamingo card. And thank you to Kelly for already
No
following
pressure.
the presentation.
I'll just send him a headshot I already have.
Okay.
Took a selfie.
Okay. For those of you heading across the Howard Franklin Bridge, you get 20-minute head start. We won't continue this meeting longer than we need to. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you for coming and being present.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you too.
And allowing us to have a quorum.
Here you go. See you.
Thank you. I don't have one with me, so.
Nice to see you.
There you go. I know you asked for one, so there you go. Well, I have one.
I'll email you.
Okay.
Got
Yeah.
email to the secretary.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you too.
I thought it was a deadline, but make it.
Something about the cheap
I could have sent the next day, but that day was out the way.
There's always time.
Are you WSP?
So very interesting name.
I was sitting my seat ready.
I don't know. It sounds like I'm still going to be doing stick now for a while.
The name is spelled D-Z-A-I. Oh, perfect name.
Travis, thanks for being here.
Penelope.
There are some around.
Yeah, that's right. So,
I wanted to answer your question.
She
may be, I think. She may be the second.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of there, but it's going on. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
And I know Chester about it.
That would be fascinating.
That would
That'd be good to know.
Fun to meet you.
Mention pro, because one of the outreach opportunities.
Thank you. Do you have a card as well, or not yet? Okay, all right. I never gave you my card.
Yeah, it was on there.
It wasn't, okay, well, same thing with
Yep, they're on the G-Tower.
Anybody else y'all think of, let us know.
Yeah, you guys had it was pretty well covered.
Jennifer, how are you?
Myself,
I can speak. I'm not on the cone of silence.
let's see. I think this is Central Vanilla.
What's her last name?
Yeah, sure.
Spoiled again.
So now, So how long you?
Mother will see next.
So this is week 5. Five. This is for the so far. So I'm leading the small team that's in charge of going out to meeting employers and talking about skills. So encouraging them to carpool cutter festival.
Well, I mean, that's where.
Helping them offer some benefits to their employees so they can qualify. So we're working on
Let me give you a card. I got a few left if you'd like that.
Take you, Luke.
Yeah, okay. All right. I do.
Okay, that's really a little bit farther now.
Going across the bridge. I will, definitely. Never worked in Tampa.
Well, we're going to Ybor this weekend.
Oh, you are?
That's what I was saying. I don't get my pass.
It's about 5 miles farther than here, but it takes about 20 minutes to go up.
We have constituents.
You guys still in
That's the way by which they can.
ready?
It's two ways. It's not just us giving a message, it's how we.
Good to see you again.
Respond to
Oh,
it.
here.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, you too. Nice to meet you. And listen, I'm gonna go over this list of partners and stuff like that. I'm up and ask. So.
Communicate, you got it.
Community advocacy with us, association. I'm also the vice president of Council Neighborhood Associations. Okay, so there's a lot of places.
You're only getting across that road.
I am not going across the highway.
Okay, so I always have to make sure that the veteran
Selman,
component is
connected to
integrated.
I-4,
Because we need to make sure there's proper transportation to the VA from all areas of the county. Okay, so that's like something that I'm really in. Right now, I'm having such a hard time because we can't cross county lines. So we don't cross it, blah, blah, blah. So I'm reaching out to the transit system because, well, I don't know how else to get the veterans there. When we go to hospital and ask them, I gotta get them here, for their treatments. Excellent. We'll get together and yak and chat and all that fun stuff. I'm all over the county, so if you really, you're up my way or whatever, grab a lunch or something, I can run out.
Yeah, let's schedule something. I don't really get up that way. I live in Eden and work
Oh,
in Tampa.
yeah.
So I don't get far north very often.
Yeah,
but-
so we'll schedule some, have you up our way, and they can check some things out. We'll go to the West Side Deli, which is a nice little place. In fact, every time anybody comes up from TBARTA, because they go to government center, it's right across the street from
Oh,
government
good,
center,
okay.
right, you know?
Yeah, I know.
You can't miss.
But I understand.
You know, 'cause you can get everything from wrapped to really bad,
Oh,
salads to, you know.
sounds good.
Excellent. You're welcome, and I look forward to checking out the Facebook page too.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I've been posting every day, so.
Yeah, I saw that, that's great, and I've already shared on my page with the scooters and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you know, and as we start on these projects, getting to a place where there's opportunities for public engagement, like when we do the, Metro Quest thing,
Right.
that'll be all over.
Right, right.
You know, for now, it's kind of been focusing on the commuter services, transit, and carpooling, vanpooling, guaranteed ride home. those kinds of things.
Sure, well, you gotta start
I mean,
something.
that's what we're offering right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but as those public engagement opportunities become available, you know, we'll add events to the Facebook and we'll put them out there.
So now that you brought that up, do you know Casey Kersey?
I know the name.
Okay, so she did a Metro Quest for us, AECOM, okay, out of Boston.
Okay.
And I was just curious, because Bill was, you know, that was one of the questions. He was leaning towards you guys were gonna gather all that information. So I just wanted to make sure you could utilize that stuff from Metro Quest for her specifically.
Yeah.
That is.
Does that go into?
Thank you, Travis.
Everybody's
Probably.
pony up to the bar.
So then I'm gonna follow through on that and make sure that it did. And if it didn't, then I'm gonna make sure that you get that information.
Bill left.
That's okay. I'll follow through with Bill because he knows me and.
A vision on implementation is a hallucination.
Just kidding.
Well, there's so much work that's already
Oh, no,
done.
the north.
It's all together.
Some of them.